What's up everybody, welcome back to Totally Exposed, and in this video we're going to show you how we set up our Canon C200 for filmmaking. Let's do this. So there's a firmware update. It came out actually a couple of months ago for the Canon C200. It offers a new MP4 codec, and it offers the opportunity for proxy files to be named the same as the RAW files apparently, which makes it a bit easier to marry them up in post. We've put off upgrading to the latest firmware mainly because I can't be bothered to go through and update the camera with all of our personal settings again. However, figured it's probably about time we did update the firmware, and if we're going to do that anyway and reset it all up, we might as well film it and let you guys see how it is that we set this camera up for our personal projects. So who's this video going to be for? Well, if you own a Canon C200 or if you're thinking about buying Canon C200, it might be good to have a look at how other people like us set the camera up and what shortcut buttons we tend to use. If you're thinking about renting one for an upcoming project, then this video might help you out, get up to speed with the camera a little bit quicker, save you some money kind of learning the camera when you're on set. Or finally, if you're just a bit of a camera nerd like we are, you might appreciate just watching and seeing what this camera can actually do, what the menu should look like. So I guess we just get into it, shall we? So first things first, we need to update the firmware as we said. You need to head over to the Canon website, you need to go and get the file that they've got, and you download it to the SD card, and then you put it in SD card slot B. So here on the side, we have many different ways of getting into the menus. There's one on the screen here. You've got a button on the back here, up here, down here. So when you're hand holding the camera, there's a lot of different ways you can get in. I'm just going to click this button on the back here to get into the menu. So like I said, the first thing we'll do is we'll update the firmware. You actually have a couple of joysticks again. There's one here on the handle grip on the side. There's one here up on the screen, and there's one here on the back of the body as well. So if we come across here to the cog icon, and we'll come across, and we'll come down to firmware. So we're on 1.0.1.1.0.0, that's exciting. And it's asking us, do we want to upgrade? So we're actually jumping a couple of versions here. Let's say, yes please. That's now updating the firmware. It says, please do not turn off or disconnect the power.
A few moments later.
Okay, so the firmware is finally updated, and as you can see, we're presented with the option to kind of re-enter the time. So updating the firmware has actually totally reset the whole camera as if it was brand new, kind of out the factory again. So let's just go through the setup steps then. So this is, like I say, this is out the box. Let's pick our time zone. So where are we? We are in England, so we'll go for that one there, as if we're in Greenwich in London. The date, 23rd. Okay, so the time's set. Let's go back into the menu and see what we've got going on in here. There's a few options along the top. So your main options running along the top here. You can see we've got kind of camera related settings, that's your picture profile related settings. We've got recording and media related settings. There's audio monitoring settings. There's actual monitoring settings. Assistance functions like focus guides and peaking and zebras. Some connection settings for setting up kind of Wi-Fi and stuff. Assignable buttons, which is what we use quite a lot. That's for customizing what these actual buttons do when you click on them. And then finally actual kind of system settings like setting the date and time and the languages and stuff. So if we come all the way back across here, if you come down into a setting using the little joystick, you can then come across here and you can see the sub-menus of these various things. So here, for example, face detection off. The lens is actually on manual focus mode at the moment. If I turn this on, you see the camera's recognized. Now I've turned the autofocus on. We have some extra autofocus settings that we can choose from. Let me just go in here. We can set, do you want to have face detection on? Now face detection on this camera is actually very strong. We'll turn that on. And then you get to set, do you want face priority or face only? Face only means it will only change if it spots a difference in the face. Face priority means it will autofocus to whatever it deems to be the most important thing in the subject, but it will try and focus on a face if it finds one. Face only is kind of a bit better if you don't want it hunting the background as somebody goes in and out of frame. It will just keep it there. But we'll just select face priority for now. So you can see you can go through a lot of these settings and change things. We have the autofocus modes. You can have one shot, you can have continuous, and you can also have this thing called AF boosted manual focus, which we'll get to in a second. But we'll leave that as one shot for now. You also get to select your the size. Do you want it in the center, or do you want a selectable frame for your autofocus? We'll leave ours as selectable, and you get the option of do you want a large or a small autofocus selectable point. We'll leave ours as large. So just with these settings, first of all, we'll see what we've got. So we cancel out of this, and we'll go back onto here. You can see now that I have the option of clicking on the screen to select an autofocus point. Now we said that we were on one shot here. So if you want to pull focus for that first one shot, this button here at the front, this is the one shot autofocus button. So you can select your frame. You can also move your frame around here if you want to using the joystick. So as I've said, we're in the larger of the squares now. And if you hold this button down, it will pull focus and you'll get instant focus on where you were, and that will stay like that now. Similarly, if you clicked kind of all the way back up here again, nothing happens. You click the button, it's pulled focus to where you were expecting it to be. You can change the behavior of this. So let's just have a look at seeing what the small box looks like. So you get a much smaller area to pull focus to. And the autofocusing system is pretty snappy, as you'll see. Like, that's pretty good. If we come back in and have a look at continuous autofocus, again you have the same settings for selectable rather than center frame, and you have, we'll go for the smaller square, and we'll come back out, make sure our lens is on autofocus mode. This time when you just click, you don't have to press the one shot button, it will just automatically wrap focus to whatever you've clicked on in the frame. You can also use the joystick. It's a bit cumbersome to do it this way, but you can use the joystick and it will follow the joystick, but I think it's just easier if you are using this method to just click on the screen. Another feature I really like about this camera, you have this button here. Number one, you get these focus guides. So this is helpful if you're manually focusing, but you want a little bit of help to see where your focus needs to be. If I switch my lens over to manual focus and I move the point to somewhere out of here, which is out of focus. So number one turns on and off this little indicator here, which is the focus guide indicator. And what that does is it kind of gives you an indication of how far out you are. And you see these arrows that are pointing outwards. As I turn the lens, you see they start coming together to show you how far off it thinks you are from focusing entirely. And then when you get close, it will go green and it will tell you, yeah, we think that's in focus. Similarly, if you go out too far out the other side, the arrows, they point down and shows you how far out of focus you are that way. That's a really handy feature. We use that one quite a lot when we're manually focusing, and then you can just leave it. So I think either between that or the one-shot focus, they're really good for getting kind of product shots where you can then start panning and things. But if you're doing sort of documentary style things and you're kind of on your own, I know a lot of people frown at using autofocus, but the autofocus on here, the face detection, proper good quality stuff. That's what Canon are really renowned for. They're, as well as their colour science, their dual pixel autofocus system is second to none. So we've kind of looked at focusing a little bit. Let's have a look at the recording modes itself, the MP4 and the RAW. The RAW is obviously the juicy stuff. If we go back into the menu system here, we'll come across to this third one, the third option. This is the recording and the media setup. Initialize media, that basically resets the card, kind of formats it, either a low level format or a complete level format. And it's asking here, what is the recording option that you want to do? So, here we go. In fact, this is the first time I've seen it. This is the new codec that you can record in as part of the latest firmware, the XF AVVC codec. Let's pick RAW. You see the kind of screen resets a little bit. And now we're recording RAW as indicated by the little RAW icon up in the corner. I haven't got a CFast card actually in the camera, but you'll need CFast cards if you want to be able to record RAW. They're not cheap, but worthwhile getting. So once you're in here, we can set our system frequency. We're in the UK, so we tend to go for like 50 Hertz. You can change your frame rate between 50p and 25p when you're recording RAW. So we'll go for 25 frames a second. And you can there's some other options here about kind of how you want to name the files and stuff. It's kind of more advanced, but just to get going with, that's how you turn on the RAW recording. 50 Hertz for us, and we're in 25 frames a second. And now we can come out of here and you can see now we are recording RAW. So now's a good opportunity. You can see this image. It's quite bright. You can see from the exposure meter at the bottom, it seems fairly overexposed. You have these quick option buttons on the side here that will give you some extra tools to let you see what's going on with your image a little bit more. These are where the cinema cameras start to come into their own. You have these dedicated buttons that are normally hidden away in settings on sort of DSLRs. So waveform monitors, for example, you can just turn them on and off straight away with a little click of a button. That's really easy. You can turn on zebras on and off with a click of a button. Also really handy. Peaking, you can turn that on. You can have peaking on and off. And you can configure in the settings what color the peaking is. We'll do that in a second. You can also magnify in if you want to really pull focus. And then you can come back out again and you can leave it as it is. So there's a lot of tools on here which are really helpful. We have quick access to our ISO. You can turn the ISO up, turn the ISO down. If I massively overexpose this image then, just to demonstrate, we also have built-in ND. Huge, huge thing to have. Let's change the shutter. So we have a shutter of 1/50th of a second, we're at 25p. You can also change that to a shutter angle, which is what we tend to do. We'll do that in a second as well. But the built-in ND, and you can see instant ND, 6 stops, nothing. Super handy when you're out and about. You haven't got to have ND filters for all your different lenses. It's actually built into the body of the camera. We use that quite a lot, especially obviously when we're shooting outdoors. Really handy feature to have. Also then when we were looking at this, you also have the option of doing the exact same process, but if you wanted to be recording in the lower bitrate MP4, you can come in and you'll see that when you change, it resets all of your settings to do with the frame rate. So that is a bit of a pain, but you can now come in and say I want 50p or 25p MP4, and it will give the options of do you want 4K MP4 or do you want 1080p MP4, and you can see that both of those are in 8 bits, unfortunately, but that's what you get with this camera. If we come back and we'll leave it in RAW, and we'll leave it as 25 frames per second. Let's come across to this setting up here, which is the color profile setting. So you have these presets that are built in. At the moment we're using the preset of Rec 709, but you can also have Canon log preset and you can have C-Log 3 presets. We tend to use C-Log 3 when we're shooting in RAW, and when you're in C-Log, obviously we know what log does. It kind of flattens out the picture profile. We haven't really got the best thing to film here to demonstrate colors because it's quite monotone, but if I swap out the keyboard and we put this little chap in, okay, so here we have our little Hannibal Lecter. You can see as we go through these different picture profiles, if I go back to Rec 709, you can see in the background the amount of saturation and the amount of kind of contrast increases. However, you can view on the monitor the footage with the Rec 709 applied, which helps you sometimes kind of pull focus a little bit easier. You get that extra contrast. So if we went in and had a look at how to do that, we go into the menu and we can see there's a LUT option here. Let's click into here. So you have the option of turning on HDR on and off. We don't do much work with HDR, we tend to leave that off. However, you do have the option of applying a lookup table to various outputs. So the viewfinder, if you were looking just through here, you can send a LUT just to that feed. You can send the LUT just to the video, which in this instance means this monitor is attached to it. And if you had something recording via the SDI out, like another DirectX monitor or something, you can send the LUT straight to that as well. To see it on this monitor here, you can click on the video option, and you can toggle on which kind of LUT it is that you're looking for. So if we wanted to go for the BT709, that's a Rec 709 color space LUT, and press that, you can see the background's now changed and we're getting more of a Rec 709 look. And you can see here on the left hand corner of the screen, there's this LUT little icon to show that what you're looking at, it's actually got a LUT applied to it. It might be a bit better if I put a little stop of ND on. You can see that the color and the contrast is more kind of akin to what it would be if you were looking in the Rec 709 color space. We tend to leave it exactly like that. C-Log 3, but with the preview LUT turned on. Another setting that's worth turning on that we tend to do that's just sprung to mind is the fan. Now, you won't be able to hear it very well, but the camera does have a fan, and it's kind of noticeable, especially if you had a shotgun microphone attached to the camera, you might be able to pick it up. There's an option to only turn the fan on when it's in standby mode, but when you start recording, to turn the fan off, and we tend to activate that function. So you come into the menu, you go into the spanner. Let's go across. It's in one of these somewhere. Here we go, fan. So yeah, by default, it's always on. I like to turn it to automatic. Automatic means that, it, like I say, it will only turn on when the camera's recording. It will turn off when the camera's recording. It will only turn on when the camera's in standby mode. So let's look at customizing some of our buttons. Now, we don't go crazy. We kind of like to keep the camera kind of close to stock as possible. However, there are a couple of things where I found it was quite handy to change some of the buttons. So for example, this display button here, number 7, seems a bit void, especially when it's duplicated up here on the main menu here, on the main screen. So we actually reprogrammed this button last time, and I'll show you now how you can reprogram buttons to do other things. So if we go back into the menu, this kind of one before the last option here is the assignable buttons, and you can see by default this is what they all are. So number 7 is currently display, as it says on the icon there. However, I can change this to be almost anything that I want from this pre-prescribed list. Auto white balance lock, that's what we had it set on previously. We found that quite handy. So auto white balance, I mean, a lot of the time, especially when we're doing kind of run and gun stuff, we haven't got time to grey card it up. I mean, if we're in a studio environment, that's fine. But if we're out and about and set white balance all the time and leaving it, equally though, we don't want to leave on auto white balance because you get colour shifting throughout the scene, especially if it's a long take and like the sun's going in behind the clouds or whatever. So let's lock off the white balance for this scene. So actually the white balance at the moment is set to 60 Kelvin. That's on, you can see the little icon there, it's got an A on it. So you can set up white balance presets and you get 2 of them, A and B, and you can quick toggle between them with one of these buttons on the side. For us, we don't tend to use that. So I press the white balance button down here, and you get the option here using the controller to toggle through. So you can have, like I said, profile A, profile B. You can have presets like kind of daylight and tungsten. You can type in a manual amount of a Kelvin value, or there's auto white balance. And you can see like it kind of jumps around a little bit as the lighting will change, as you'd expect auto white balance to do. So we tend to just auto white balance the scene. And now I've got this quick button number 7. You can see that's grayed this out, and the white balance is locked now for the duration of this scene. Pretty handy feature. So lastly, I think the only other thing that's worth showing is how you can create your own custom menus. You can see at the very end here, you kind of have these My Menus, and you get up to 5 little subsections as well. And these will allow you to just kind of go in and you can register your own quick, if you want to jump into a feature really quickly, you can do that. So if I wanted a quick way of formatting the card, I could go into initialize media, and I can say, yeah, go on then, SD card A, register that. Cool. Click OK. And now I can, with one button in my menu, I can initialize SD card A if I wanted to, and I can keep going through, and I can say register, and I could say I also want to be able to quickly jump into the frame rate. Okay, now I can quickly adjust the frame rate and initialize my SD card, all in kind of my menu area. Also, pretty useful feature. We tend to configure this out with some of our kind of quick ones, especially jumping between 25p and 50p, and jumping between MP4 and RAW. Pretty handy to have these all just in here. And then finally, the last thing that we like to do is change the shutter speed so that we're shooting in angles rather than kind of 1x of a second. It just automatically updates it, and when you're changing your frame rates for you, you can see you're always at 180 degrees. So finally, we go into menu, we come across to this first option here, and we come across and you can see shutter mode, speed. If I change that to angle, and then come back out, you can see now it says that we're shooting at 180 degrees. Awesome. So there you go, guys. That's how we personally set up our C200 for filmmaking. If that was useful, give the video a little thumbs up down below. Please like, comment, share, subscribe as well. And if you do subscribe, don't forget to click the little bell icon so you always get notified of any future videos that we make. And we'll catch you in the next one.